So for this example, we're going to go over a query that will involve both exploring the metadata and finding images that are related to the metadata, because we're going to search for some specific criteria on the metadata, and then using the relationships that exist between the metadata and the data, we're going to extract those specific images. So again, this is regular Python code. We import the VDMS Python module and issue a connection to the VDMS server running on localhost. And in this particular case, we're going to be doing the following query. Basically, it is return 100 by 100 images of a brain scan of all patients that were admitted when they were older than 80 years old. So we have a property for that. That property is the age at initial. That's the way it's called. And that's a property that tells us at which age the patient was admitted to the clinic. And for this case, we have to do 3 steps, basically. The first step involves getting information about the patients. The second step is getting information about the brain scans, because each brain scans has 155 images. So we need to get the metadata information about those scans corresponding to the patients that we're looking for. And finally, once we have information about the scans, we can actually see what are the images that are connected to that scan and retrieve those images. So for each of the steps, we're going to be using a separate command in this case. So in the first case, we're going to be using the find entity, similar to the first example that we saw. We are going to be doing a find entity of the class patient, and the constraint, it's the same that we used before. We are using this constraint over this property on patients over 80. What is new about this call is that we are declaring a reference. In this case, we use the _ref reserved word to specify that we are interested in using the result of this find entity into some other commands. In this case, we're using the random number. I picked 43 to create a reference to whatever is the result of this find entity. As a second step, as I mentioned before, we need to go over and get information about those about scans. But we are only interested in the scans that are connected to the patients that I found before on the first entity. So I declare that I want to find entity of the type scan. And here, using the link block, I can specify that I'm only interested in those scans that are connected to whatever was the result of reference 43. Since this is the reference 43, basically what we're telling the system is that we should get only the scans corresponding to those patients. At the same time, we're going to declare a new reference, because since we now are interested in getting the images of those scans, I'm going to declare a new reference over the scans. In this case, it's just a random number that I picked, 555. Finally, I'm going to be using a FindImage call. FindImage call has some specific characteristics that we can use because it's specifically designed for retrieving images, which will allow us, for example, change the format as we retrieve the image or apply some specific operations. So in this case, again, we're going to be using the link block and using the reference 555, which is the reference from the scan, to tell the system that we only want those images that are related to those scans that we found. In this case, we're also going to be using the operations block. The operations block is used for applying this pre-processing kind of operation. In this case, remember that we were asking for 100 by 100 images. So we can use since the image will be in a different resolution. In this case, these are 240 by 240 images. We can resize the image at query time. So if we need 100 by 100, we specify those in these parameters of the resize operation. And in this case, we are applying both operations. This is just to show an example of how applying more than one operation is possible. In this case, we're specifying that we want first a resize and then a threshold operation, right? And the threshold operation basically is going to zero out all those pixels which values are less than 120. So at query time, when we are doing the find image, we are at the same time applying these pre-processing operations. We'll apply some constraints. This is because I'm picking only one image out of the 155 images on the brain scan. This is just for demonstration purposes. And finally, I specify the results block to get the property. So when I run the query, when I issue this query, I will get the response and the images. And this is regular Python code just to display the images. So we run this query, and as you can see, I get 100 by 100 images that has been resized and to 100 by 100, and also a threshold operation happen. If we put a value of 0 to, which means that basically we will not be applying any thresholding, and run the query again, we should see the original images. As you can see, the images that are there, or we can even make the images a bit larger too, so you can appreciate better these brain scans. And as you can see, all these pre-processing operations and all these basically graph traversal over specific patients and specific scans that you want to retrieve and specific images, you can do all that and express all that complexity within our interface.